Welcome back to the deep dive. It is Thursday, February 19th, 2026. And look, usually when we grab an earnings report to look at, we're strictly looking for the scoreboard, right? Like, did they beat the street? Is the stock up?
The usual finance metrics.
Yeah. And yes, we have that today. Figma officially crossed the $1 billion annual revenue mark yesterday.
Which, I mean, is just a massive psychological and financial barrier to break for any SaaS company.
It's totally massive. But honestly, after reading through the stack of papers we have, and I mean really digging into the earnings transcripts, the developer demos they put out, the strategy deck, the money is actually kind of the least interesting part of the story.
I completely agree with you. The money is just the lagging indicator here.
Yeah.
Because the game they were playing has completely changed.
Right, because for the last, I don't know, decade, if I said the word Figma to you, you immediately thought design tool. You thought about hipster designers in coffee shops moving rectangles around on a canvas.
Maybe arguing about font weights or hex codes?
Exactly. It was Adobe Illustrator for the browser. It was a tool built for a very, very specific cast of people.
Right, the creatives.
But looking at this Q4 2025 report, that definition just feels dead. Figma isn't building a design tool anymore. They're building an operating system for literally anyone who touches a product. Developers, PMs, marketers, they're blurring lines that I really didn't think could be blurred.
We are fully entering the era of what they're calling code to canvas.
Yeah.
And that is not just some marketing slogan they slapped on a deck. It's a fundamental shift in how software gets built.
Yeah.
It's moving from a world where design and code are two completely isolated, different languages to a world where they're just two different views of the exact same underlying truth.
Which is wild. And we have to talk about the teleporting code thing. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that demo where they literally beam an app from a terminal window straight into a design file.
Oh, the round trip, yeah. We will never get there. It is genuinely the closest thing to magic I've seen in a SaaS product in a long time.
But before we get to the sci-fi stuff, we sort of have to eat our vegetables and look at the financials for a minute.
Let's do it.
Because the numbers tell us who is actually paying for this magic, right? So Q4 revenue came in at $304 million. That's up 40% year over year. They're sitting on a frankly absurd mountain of cash, $1.7 billion. But there is one number in this report that just screams absolute dominance, and that is the net dollar retention rate.
136%.
Okay, so let's unpack this for a second. For the listener who doesn't, spend their entire life inside Excel sheets or listening to enterprise software breakdowns, can you contextualize that 136%? Is that just a good number, or is it something else entirely?
It's strictly world-class. Like in the software world, anything over 120% is generally considered the gold standard.
Okay.
It puts you in that rule of 40 territory where growth and retention meet perfectly. So 136% is almost unheard of at the scale of a company.
So what does that actually mean in practice for them?
It means that if you look at the exact cohort of customers that Figma had exactly 1 year ago, not only did almost all of them stay, they didn't cancel their subscriptions, but that exact same group of people is paying 36% more today than they were last year.
Without Figma having to go out and sell to a single new company.
Exactly. Without acquiring a single new logo. It means the product spreads like a virus inside these companies. Think about it. It starts with the core design team, right? Then the engineers say, hey, I need a seat to see the specs and the padding. Then the product managers want in so they can leave comments on the wireframes.
Right.
Then marketing wants a seat to grab brand assets. And suddenly, you aren't paying for 10 designer seats anymore. You're paying for 500 seats across the whole org.
And that viral spread, that internal land grab, brings us directly to the Figma Make surge. Because this is the part of the report that honestly surprised me the most.
This is the simplified interface they launched last year.
Right, Figma Make. It's basically their tool for the rest of us. The people who get totally paralyzed if they open a professional design tool and see a toolbar with 50 different pen tools and Boolean operations and layers.
Can be very intimidating.
Super intimidating. So the report says weekly active users for Figma Make grew over 70% just in the last quarter alone. But catch this stat. This is the crazy part. Nearly 60% of all files created in Figma Make in 2025 were created by non-designers.
See, that right there is the metric that justifies the billion-dollar valuation.
Yeah.
That is the aha moment for investors.
60%. We are talking about developers, product managers, marketers. Why is this happening right now? Why are all these people suddenly willing to jump into a design tool? Because historically, developers absolutely hate opening design files. It feels like walking into a china shop where you're terrified you might break something.
I think it's fundamentally about removing the fear of the blank canvas.
Yeah.
For years, if a PM wanted to mock up a new feature idea, what did they do? They'd sketch it on a physical whiteboard or a literal napkin. Because opening a pro tool felt too risky. They didn't know how to use auto layout.
Yeah.
They definitely didn't want to accidentally mess up the global design system that the lead designer spent 3 months building.
Oh, I've absolutely been there. You open the master file, you try to move one tiny button, and suddenly the entire footer jumps to the top of the screen, and you just panic close the tab and pray that no one saw your cursor do it.
Precisely. We've all done it.
Yeah.
But Figma Make completely removes that fear. It uses AI and heavily simplified controls to basically just say, tell me what you want to build.
Mm-hmm.
And doing this expands their total addressable market, their TAM, explosively. There's a classic ratio in tech companies. For every one UI designer you hire, you usually have about 8 developers and maybe 2 product managers.
So if you only sell software to designers, you are actively ignoring 90% of the potential paid seats in the building.
Exactly. But if you can suddenly sell to developers and the PMs, now you are selling to the entire organization. You aren't just a point solution tool anymore. You're the platform.
And we have some pretty wild examples of this happening in the wild right now. The Flexport story in the transcript really stood out to me because it wasn't just a generic, oh, we used Figma to do our job story. It was entirely about speed.
Are you talking about the hackathon story?
Yeah, the hackathon. So Flexport does this March Madness style hackathon internally. They tell their teams, you have 24 hours, go solve a core reason why customers don't choose us. Now, historically, corporate hackathons are super messy.
Yeah, it's a lot of Red Bull and bad code.
Exactly. It's engineers coding all night, the prototypes are super broken, and the UI usually looks like wireframes drawn in MS Paint circa 1998.
It's always function over form in those 24-hour sprints. The classic developer excuse is look at the logic, just ignore the ugly buttons for now.
Right. But this time, they used Figma Make, and the CEO of Flexport said the difference was night and day. They weren't just showing ugly wireframes at the end of the 24 hours, they were building interactive, high-fidelity functioning apps.
Because they didn't have to code the UI from scratch in React or whatever. They could just assemble it visually using AI.
Exactly. There was one team in particular that completely redesigned their factory onboarding process, which was apparently a massive pain point for them getting new international factories integrated into their logistics system. They built the whole solution in a single day in Figma Make, and the report notes that that specific code is actually shipping to real customers in a few weeks.
And that speed to market is what every single CEO on the planet wants right now. It's moving an organization from a document culture, writing a 20-page spec document in Word that nobody actually reads, to a prototyping culture. Don't write down how it works, just show me.
Show, don't tell. And then you have Cisco. Now, Cisco is a totally different beast than Flexport. They aren't some nimble logistics startup. They are a massive legacy enterprise backbone. And they are using something that they called agentic design ops.
Which absolutely wins the award for corporate buzzword of the year.
Oh, hands down. It sounds like a military black ops mission or a Tom Clancy novel. Agentic design ops. But what does that actually mean for the people sitting at their desks doing the work?
It's actually fascinating once you strip away the jargon. It's a workflow where product managers and designers are working inside the exact same file simultaneously.
Okay.
The PM goes in and lays out the core requirements using the AI agents, the logic, the user flow, the rough boxes. Then the designer comes in right behind them in the same file and refines the visuals and the brand language in real time.
So no more waiting for one person to finish before the other starts.
Right, but the real kicker is the engineers. They aren't waiting for a formal handoff meeting. They are accessing everything directly through the Cisco App Store using Figma's dev mode.
So it's a continuous, unbroken loop. No more throwing a finished design file over the metaphorical wall and just hoping the front-end engineer understands what you meant by that one weird drop shadow.
Yes, and that concept, the loop, is actually the perfect segue to the biggest technical bombshell in this entire earnings report, because we've talked about the designers and we've talked about the PMs, but we really need to focus on the developers now, because Figma just blurred the line between writing code and drawing design in a way I don't think anyone really saw coming this fast.
You're talking about the deep integration with Claude Code.
The round trip.
Okay, I want you to walk me through this. Because when I read the transcript of Dylan Field's demo on stage, I literally had to read it twice to make sure I wasn't totally misunderstanding the technology.
It is a lot to take in all at once.
So picture this for the listener. You are a developer. You're working in a terminal window. Black screen, monospaced text, very matrixy. You are using Claude Code, which is Anthropic's AI coding agent, to build a new app. This is a very standard, very non-visual environment.
Right. Coding by nature is incredibly linear. You are typing out logic line by line, defining variables. You usually can't truly see what you are building until you save it, compile it, run a local server, and open it in a browser. You're essentially working blind for most of the process.
Right, you're looking at the matrix. But
Yeah.
then, in the demo, the developer types a simple command into the terminal. They just type, send this app to Figma, and boom, the app you were just coding in pure text instantly appears on the Figma Infinite canvas. But, and this is the absolutely crucial part, it is not a screenshot. It's not a flat JPEG image.
No, it is fully editable design layers. The buttons are actual Figma buttons. The text is editable text boxes. The auto layout parameters are perfectly applied based on your CSS. It has real structural hierarchy.
That is just mind-blowing. You took raw text-based code and translated it perfectly into a visual design file in 1 second.
But wait, because it actually gets better. So now you have this coded app sitting on the visual canvas. Maybe you notice the spacing between the columns is slightly off. Or the primary brand color looks weird next to the hero image. Or the checkout flow is just confusing.
Yeah.
Because humans are visual creatures, we spot these layout issues instantly on a canvas. Whereas in code, those issues are deeply hidden in a messy soup of div tags and CSS classes.
So you're on the canvas, you click and drag the button over, you change the hex code for the color, you fix the layout padding just using your mouse, the way any designer would.
And then you use the MCP, the Model Context Protocol, to send those visual changes directly back into your local code base.
That is the round trip. Code to canvas, fix it on the canvas, push canvas back to code.
It completely fundamentally solves the source of truth problem that has plagued product teams forever. For 20 years, we have had this endless argument. Is the master design file the source of truth, or is the production code the source of truth?
And usually the design file is just a pretty picture that becomes instantly outdated the exact second the coding actually starts.
Because the developer always has to change something to make it work in the real world, and they never go back and tell the designer to update the Figma file.
Exactly. But Figma is basically saying now, why do we have to choose a single source? If the translation cost between visual design and text code drops all the way to 0, they are both the truth simultaneously.
Exactly.
I do have to play devil's advocate here, though. I am sure there are veteran developers listening to us right now who are just aggressively rolling their eyes because every single tool that has ever promised design to code over the last decade has produced absolute garbage code, just unmaintainable spaghetti logic, terrible class names, absolute nightmares to maintain. Is this actually different? Or is it just a really well-rehearsed stage demo?
That is the exact skepticism every single seasoned developer has. And it's incredibly healthy to be skeptical of that promise. But the fundamental difference here is the AI models powering it, things like Claude, Gemini, the really advanced foundation models. They aren't just dumbly exporting the design layers like an old printer driver.
Right.
They are actively writing the code the way a human software engineer would. They understand the context of the entire app. And Figma Make now officially supports these experimental high-end models, like Gemini 3 Pro and Claude Opus 4.6.
So they are betting heavily that the AI is finally smart enough to write clean semantic code based entirely on visual layout changes.
Right. And strategically, by positioning themselves as just the interface layer, Figma doesn't actually care whose AI brain you use on the back end. Use Google's brain, use Anthropic's brain, use OpenAI's brain. Figma just wants to be the hands and the eyes. They are establishing themselves as the visualization layer for the AI brain.
Speaking of hands, and maybe people who can't use them very well to draw, they also launched a new feature called Vectorize inside Figma Draw.
I feel like this one was built specifically for you.
It really, really was. I cannot draw a straight line to save my life. My stick figures look like they're in physical pain. But this Vectorize feature basically lets you sketch a terrible idea on a literal physical napkin, scan it in with your phone, and the AI instantly turns it into a perfect, mathematically clean, editable vector illustration.
Dynamic vector illustrations, yes. Which means you can scale that terrible napkin sketch up to the size of a highway billboard, and it won't get pixelated at all. It's really about lowering the floor for creation. You don't need to spend 4 years mastering the Bezier pen tool in Illustrator anymore just to get a professional-looking asset.
Okay, so we have covered the low end of the market, making it super easy for non-designers to build things. And we've covered the hardcore developer side with the Claude Code terminal integration. But there is a third pillar in this earnings report that we absolutely cannot ignore, and that is the ultra high end. We're talking Hollywood-level visual production. We need to talk about their recent acquisition of Weavy, which they've now rebranded as Figma Weave.
This is Figma, actively coming for Adobe's core lunch. This isn't just UI anymore. This is high-fidelity creative production.
And the main example they gave in the call was NVIDIA. And you really don't get much bigger or more demanding than NVIDIA right now.
This is for the CES keynote, right?
Right. So the story goes, NVIDIA needed a massive group shot of 20 completely unique, highly detailed robots for their main presentation at CES. But they needed to display this image on a 12K resolution screen behind the CEO.
Just to pause you there for the listener, 12K resolution is frankly astronomical. A really nice standard 4K TV in your living room has about 8 million pixels. 12K is, well, it's just exponentially more. It's literal wall-size clarity.
Yeah.
And the technical problem is current generative AI models, the stuff like Midjourney or DALL-E that we all play with on our phones, they usually max out at rendering around 4K.
Yeah.
If you try to just naively stretch a 4K AI image to fit a 12K screen, it looks like a blurry, artifact-filled mess.
So how did Figma Weave actually solve it? Because obviously they couldn't just type a prompt saying, make me a 12K image of 20 cool robots and hit enter.
No, they had to use a highly modular workflow. They didn't ask the AI for one big finished image. They started by generating very low-fidelity, basic 3D models first, just to lock in the composition. Establishing where the robots stand, the depth of the field, the exact camera angle.
Sort of like blocking out a scene with actors on a movie set before you start rolling cameras.
Exactly like that. Once that basic composition was completely locked in, they used Figma Weave to generate incredibly detailed native 4K versions of each individual robot in isolation.
Oh, I see. So they broke the giant puzzle into a bunch of smaller, manageable 4K pieces that the AI could actually handle.
Yes, and they even deployed a custom AI agent, strictly to simulate the complex lighting across all 20 robots so that they perfectly matched. So the shadows fell the right way, the reflections on the metal matched the environment, and then Weave stitched all those high-res assets together and upscaled the final composite.
That is just incredible to me. It really shows that AI isn't just a simple make art button anymore. It is becoming a complex, multi-step production pipeline.
And that is exactly what Figma Weave represents strategically. It's not just for making simple app interfaces anymore. It's for high-end marketing, video generation, incredibly complex creative assets. It shows that Figma wants to completely own the creative process from that messy napkin sketch all the way up to the 12K board.
Okay, so listening to all this, everything sounds absolutely perfect. Revenue is up massively. The technology is literally sci-fi. Enterprise customers are happy. And there is a big, but here, if we look at the financial guidance they provided for the rest of 2026, there is definitely a flashing construction ahead sign on the road.
You're looking at the operating margins.
I am looking at the margins. They are projecting top-line revenue to hit roughly $1.37 billion next year, which is a very solid 30% growth rate. But the non-GAAP operating margin is expected to absolutely plummet to roughly 8%. It was nearly double that, hovering around 12 to 14% in 2025.
And Wall Street investors usually absolutely hate seeing margins drop like that. They want to see increasing efficiency as a company scales, not decreasing.
Exactly. So why is a software company that is growing this incredibly fast planning to become significantly less profitable next year?
It is a highly calculated, massive bet. The CFO, Praveer Malwani, and Dylan Field were very, very clear about this in the Q&A section of the transcript. They're intentionally putting their foot all the way down on the gas.
But what exactly are they spending all that margin on? Are they just buying gold-plated office chairs for the new offices?
No, they are buying raw intelligence that breaks down into two main buckets: talent and compute.
Okay.
AI is not free, not even close. What we call inference costs, which is the actual computational cost of running these massive models like Claude and Gemini every single time a user makes a change on the canvas. Those costs are staggering. And they are also hiring aggressively to build out these entirely new AI infrastructure teams.
So they see a very specific window of opportunity here.
They see a once-in-a-generation window where the entire global software workflow is being fundamentally rewritten by AI. If they try to pinch pennies right now just to maximize short-term profit and keep Wall Street happy, they might lose the underlying platform war. They're willingly sacrificing their short-term margin for long-term absolute dominance. They want to be the default desk that everyone sits at.
It's a massive land grab.
100% a land grab.
And to help pay for that incredibly expensive land grab, they are fundamentally changing how they charge us for the product. Starting next month, in March 2026, their monetization model is officially shifting to what they call seats plus AI credits.
This is a huge, huge deal for their enterprise customers to digest.
It feels a little bit like, I don't know, putting a quarter in an arcade machine every time you want to play, or paying for gas by the gallon.
The gas analogy is probably the best way to look at it. It introduces a true consumption-based model to their revenue. Think of it a lot like how AWS or Snowflake bills you. You pay your standard flat subscription just to own the car that's your seat license. But you also have to pay dynamically for the actual gas you use, which are the AI inference credits.
And are people actually using enough of this AI gas to make this complex pricing shift worth it for Figma?
Well, according to the earnings report, 75% of their paid enterprise customers, specifically the ones spending over 10 grand a year, are already consuming AI credits on a weekly basis.
That is a startlingly high adoption rate for a new workflow.
It is. It suggests the behavioral habit is already fully formed. Now, the risk for Figma, of course, is revenue predictability.
Right.
If everyone in Europe goes on vacation for the entire month of August and stops running heavy AI generation queries, Figma's revenue is going to take a noticeable dip that month. But the upside potential is basically uncapped. If NVIDIA decides they need to generate 10,000 highly detailed robot images tomorrow morning, Figma gets paid for that massive compute spike.
So it perfectly aligns their revenue growth with the actual computational value the customer is extracting from the tool.
Which is pretty much the holy grail of SaaS pricing mechanics.
Let's zoom out geographically for just a second, because we have talked a whole lot about Silicon Valley companies today. But the report explicitly mentions that international revenue is actually growing significantly faster than their North American core. It's up 45% year over year.
And the absolute star of that international growth is India.
Yeah, they just opened a massive new office hub in Bengaluru.
Right. India is officially now their second largest market globally by monthly active users. And honestly, that makes total strategic sense if you just think about where the actual developers are located globally.
Right. If you are building a tool specifically designed for builders, you have to go to where the builders live.
And the enterprise adoption metrics they shared really reflect that massive global scale. They noted they now have 67 different customers spending more than $1 million annually.
Wow.
And they specifically highlighted a hyperscaler, which is basically industry code for a giant tech conglomerate like a Google or an Amazon that completely doubled their entire Figma footprint this year. And get this, 25% of those brand new licenses went specifically to product managers.
There it is again. The non-designers are actively invading the design tool.
It just completely confirms the broader trend.
Yeah.
It wasn't even just tech companies either. They mentioned a major transatlantic airline that is now using Figma Make to build everything from their consumer ticket booking systems all the way to their internal airport crew scheduling tools.
Which just goes to show how incredibly horizontal this technology is becoming. Every single company in the world is a software company now, whether they like it or not.
And Figma desperately wants to be the operating system they all use to build that software.
So we have painted a picture here of a company that is just firing on absolutely all cylinders. They are betting the entire farm on AI infrastructure, and they are completely blurring the traditional lines between job roles. But I want to end our deep dive on the big sort of existential philosophical question that actually came up at the very end of the investor Q&A.
Ah, the death of UI question.
Yeah. An analyst got on the mic and asked Dylan Field point blank, is AI agent software, like the Claude Code integration we talked about, eventually going to just kill user interfaces entirely?
Lies.
Basically asking, if I can just verbally tell an AI agent on my phone, hey, book me a flight to London for next Tuesday, why do I even need a visual screen with a calendar integration and little blue buttons? Why do I need Figma to exist at all in 10 years?
It is a completely valid existential fear for a company whose entire valuation is built on designing visual interfaces.
Yeah.
Because logically, if the visual interface disappears, the company disappears with it.
And what was Dylan's actual take on that threat?
He was incredibly adamant. He said no. Absolutely not. He argues that humans were fundamentally biologically visual creatures. We need to physically see information to truly understand it and trust it. He coined this phrase, calling the future of software multiplayer with agents.
Multiplayer with agents. I actually really like that phrasing. It sounds like a co-op video game.
Right. The core idea is that the AI agent does all the heavy, boring lifting in the background.
Mm-hmm.
It searches the databases, it finds the optimal flight routes, it checks the pricing, but it absolutely has to present those final options to you visually so that you can actually trust the decision it's making.
Right.
You are never going to let an invisible AI blindly spend $2,000 of your money on a non-refundable plane ticket without first seeing the visual itinerary, checking the layover times on a timeline, and looking at the seat map to make sure you aren't stuck in a middle seat.
Right. I need to audit the AI's math. I need to verify its work before I'd approve it.
Exactly. And that human audit process happens exclusively through a user interface. So the UI doesn't just go away, it evolves. It becomes the essential communication bridge between the human brain and the AI brain.
Which honestly implies we might actually need more design in the future, not less. We need to actively design for transparency. We need to design interfaces that build trust between us and the agents.
Exactly. And Figma is betting billions of dollars that their canvas is the exact place where that complex negotiation is going to happen.
So here is my final provocative thought for you to chew on, listener, as we wrap this up. We in the industry keep talking endlessly about the handoff. You know, the designer finishes their work and hands it off to the developer. The developer writes the code and hands it off to QA.
The classic slow waterfall method of building products.
Exactly. But if 60% of these files are now being created by non-designers, and if raw code can literally be teleported onto a visual canvas, edited with a mouse, and then instantly sent back to the repository as perfectly clean code, are we actually witnessing the end of the handoff entirely?
That really is the billion-dollar question for the next decade of software.
Like, does the strict distinction between a designer and a developer even exist in 5 years? Or are we all just going to become generic product builders who are just using slightly different lenses to look at the exact same underlying data model?
The historical silos are definitely crumbling. Because if you can code just by prompting an AI and you can design just by tweaking logic, those traditional walls separating the departments are essentially gone.
It's definitely something to think about the next time you open up a new tab in your browser. And that officially wraps up our deep dive into Figma's wild 2025. Thanks for listening as always, and we will catch you in the next one.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.